Alright guys, what's going on? Round 3. Video 3 already. I'm enjoying it, honestly. This is actually nice to be able to, even if I'm just verbalizing essentially at this point with a group of friends, although there are some subscribers to the channel that I don't recognize. Thank you guys for liking, adding up, and following along. But I'm really enjoying this. This is a great way to actually work out the way my train of thought, or lack thereof, processes things. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys for the support. It's awesome to have you all along. I guess a little preface here real quick. First off, a challenge before the preface. So a preface, a preface maybe? I don't know. Regardless, I'm at 22 subscribers to this channel right now. I would challenge to see if we can't get 100 subscribers. Now, I know that's not particularly easy, especially amongst the Camvabo family, because a lot of folks don't have YouTube subscriptions, they don't have Gmail accounts to hook up and save channels and all this kind of stuff. I get that. But if we could get 100 people subscribed to this so that they know every video that comes out, so that they understand what's going on, and so that they can share it with people, that would be phenomenal. Let's shoot for that. We're almost a quarter of the way there in just a couple videos, so let's try shooting for 100 by, let's say, like February next month. We've still got like three weeks ish, something like that, left in this month. Let's try it. Let's see what we can get done with it. I like the idea. Now, moving into the rest of this letter, we're still on letter 1, Federalist 1, part 2 for us today. I stopped midway through a paragraph on the last one. Reason being is because even though it's one paragraph, it's an easy place to split between the two concepts of the same idea that he's having in this paragraph. Here is the first speed bump that we have in the Federalist Papers. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is here is the point where, in this particular case, the liberal side of things, the Democrat side of things, like to try to take things and put them out of perspective. They want to take them out of context. There are other parts, in these letters that the other side, that so-called conservatives, I'm not going to call them constitutionalists, because I believe that if you try to manipulate and distort the meaning of what's being said in these letters and in the Constitution, then you're not a constitutionalist, obviously. The closest I can give you to that is a conservative. That conservatives will try to take out a proportion, and we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. This first one is one that liberals love to go, see, he's saying this. Actually, if you think about everything, not just what's been discussed in this letter so far, but in what the final product of these letters is, which was essentially, these were the debate, if you will, for what to put in the Bill of Rights, you see, no, he's not talking about this stuff. What you liberals say he's talking about, it's not what he's talking about at all. So we're going to get to that as we go, and I'll point it out as we go. So picking up exactly where we left off, we are midway through the paragraph that starts, "It is not, however, my design to dwell upon blase, blase, blah." If you go about just past half, almost 2/3 of the way through that, you get, "This circumstance, if duly attended to, would furnish a lesson to moderation, of moderation, to those who are ever so thoroughly persuaded of their being right in any controversy." Picking up now. "And the further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth are influenced by purer principles than their antagonists. Ambition, avarice, personal amnesty, party opposition. Party opposition. What's that about? This doesn't apply today because it was a different world back then. No, it's not. Party opposition. Pay attention to that. And many other motives, not more laudable than these, are apt to operate as well upon those who support as those who oppose the right side of the question. Were there not even these inducements to moderation, nothing would be more ill-judged than that intolerant spirit which has at all times characterized political parties. Political parties, intolerant spirit, political parties. Come on, people. Figure it out. The world then was not so different as the world today. Technology and language, there's your two differences. The same concepts, the same human nature was prevalent back then as it is today. For in politics, as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim to make proselytes by fire and sword. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by persecution. Now, if you'll remember first video that I did, the introduction video, I said that Hamilton refers to politics as the same fiber of our composure as politics. Religion, politics, same thing. I might have misspoke right there, I'm not sure. Regardless, what I meant to say here is he views politics and religion to be on the same level. They are equally important to the composition of a person's moral compass. Now, essentially what he was saying in those last couple of sentences is, if it wasn't for these things that show us we must have some moderation here, we would quite literally just be letting an intolerant spirit run crazy amongst our political parties. And what we cannot do because of those intolerant spirits is create martyrs or try to spread our ideals in this aspect by the sword and that kind of thing, because it creates liars and hypocrites and all this kind of nonsense that's going on. Quite literally, when you read what he's saying here, he's literally saying, if we cannot convince people to come to an agreement in moderation so that there is a balance between the states and federal government, important to note that there, that we will be reduced. There's no other way to accomplish it other than war. Because we can't convince these guys through an act of force to agree with us. We have to eliminate, the only other option then is to eliminate the enemy. If we can't force them to agree with us, then we have to end up fighting it out until there is a dominant winner. This is directly from the war they just fought. They could not get England to agree with them. They could not come to terms with England. And thus a war had to be fought in order for a clear victor to be decided. That's what we're trying to avoid here. By the way, when you equate that from politics and transition into religion, using the word religion as loosely as possible, it kind of reminds you of something. Let's see here. Spread by fire and sword. Islam? Okay, interesting. Wow, cold. Anyways, moving on. And yet, however, just these sentiments will be allowed to be. And yet, however, just these sentiments will be allowed to be, we have already sufficient indications that it will happen in this, as in all former cases of great national discussion. A torrent of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opposition and to increase the number of their converts by the loudness of their declamations and by the bitterness of their invectives. Talk about the political parties of today. Let's back up and use definitions on some of these words and that kind of thing. So he's talking about, these are just sentiments. This is the attitude of moderation and things like that to go through, to have a level head when we discuss this, but it's not realistic. This is going to happen anyways. There will be disgusting things said about by both parties. Hatred and avarice and just all these horrible things will be spewed towards each other to try to convince people. If I say that they're nasty enough, and if I say it loud enough, people will believe me. That's how I'm going to win converts. I'm going to trash the living crap out of those guys, and I'm going to do it from the highest hilltop I can find. That's quite literally what he is saying is going to happen. Sound familiar? Just saying, again, back then, today, pretty close on par to each other. Enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of government will be stigmatized as the offspring of a temper fond of despotic power and hostile to the principles of liberty. Now, this is where this is going to get interesting. That sentence is important. What he is saying is an enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of the government. Do not misunderstand that to mean the power and size of the government. He is saying the energy and the efficiency. He is saying, quite literally, how well it operates, how streamlined it is, how perfectly balanced it must be in order to work properly. This is the same type of government that he's talking about earlier in this letter, one that is balanced between the state's power and the federal authority and not leaning too heavily to one side or the other. That is what he's talking about. Will be stigmatized by the offspring of a temper fond of despotic power and hostile to the principles of liberty. They're going to come out and essentially, to polarize us on one argument or another, they're going to come out and say that these things are of a power grab from one side or another, or they reject the liberty of the people, they reject the people's rights. That's how things are going to get polarized between these two parties, between these arguments. Again, today. Now, here's where liberals like to try to twist this part. Here's where communists like to try to twist this part. So pay attention. Please pay attention. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the rights of the people, which is more commonly the fault in the head than of the heart, will be represented as mere pretense and artifice, the stale bait for popularity at the expense of public good. That sentence is important. He is not saying that the people going out there and trying to say they're going to take your rights are the ones who are going to be against the greater good. That's not at all what he's saying. Slowly read it and pay attention to the exact words. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the rights of the people, which is more commonly the fault of the head than of the heart, will be represented, you will be told, as mere pretense and artifice, the stale bait for popularity at the expense of the public good. You don't need to listen to them about your Second Amendment rights. That's garbage. They're worried enough. They're telling you that tyranny is right around the corner. Don't listen to them. We need to think about the greater good of the public. Sound familiar? The squatter in the Oval Office today, that's him. By the way, that's who this is talking about, liberals. This is not talking about the people saying the government is looking towards taking your rights. He's talking about the fact that that viewpoint will be distorted and represented by fear-mongering and things like that. That's how it's going to be portrayed, and that is not the case. Carrying on. It will be forgotten on the one hand, that jealousy is the usual concomitant, of violent love, and that the noble enthusiasm of liberty is too apt to be infected with a spirit of narrow and illiberate distrust. I don't think I can say that any clearer than he did. If there's something in there that you're not understanding, I would really, again, I hope you're following along with your own printouts or your own books. Read it a few times, see if it makes sense. If there's something not making sense, I encourage you to look up the definition, please. I don't think it can get any plainer than that, at least not as far as my head comprehends it. Everyone hears things differently and processes very differently. So that's something to keep in mind. On the other hand, it will be equally forgotten that the vigor of government is essential to the security of liberty, that in the contemplation of a sound and well-formed judgment, their interests can never be separated, and that a dangerous ambition more often lurks behind the suspicious mask of zeal for the rights of the people than under the forbidding appearance of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. Again, liberals love to take this out of context and try to say, see, he's saying right there, the suspicious mask of zeal for the rights of the people, blah, 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 blah. This is the same man who helped write the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. These are the founding fathers. Hamilton is a huge founding father. You're telling me that he's saying that people being zealous, if you will, as he says it, zeal, having a mask of zeal for the rights of the people, that's not who he's talking about, and those aren't the rights he's talking about. He's not talking about the Bill of Rights. He's not talking about what the Constitution guarantees. He's talking about the people who would tell you that you have other rights, that the rights of the people are this, that, and the other, and they look so good. Again, referring back to his own words about them portraying themselves to be able to inspire fair prospects. Things of that nature. That's what he's talking about. And continuing with this same sentence, the rights of the people that under the foreboding appearance of zeal for the firmness of efficiency of government. Again, efficiency of government, not power, not size, not obesity, quite literally, of the current government. Efficiency. Having a government that works efficiently between the states and the federal, which obviously we do not anymore. If anything, we have seen time and time again that the federal government overruns the state's government's authority, and it is backfiring horribly. Our separation of church and state is gone, which, by the way, church and state, not separation of church from state, but that's neither here nor there, totally different argument. That's actually a more Jefferson letter argument. We'll get into that in the future. But again, liberals love to take this out of context. He's not talking about people saying the government is here to take your rights. The government is moving to take your rights. He's talking about the people who would tell you, you have a right to free healthcare. No, you don't. You have a right to a cell phone. No, you don't. You have a right to a free education. No, you don't. You don't have any of those rights. None. Those aren't rights. You don't have a right to drive a car. You have a right to travel. There's a huge difference. You don't have a right to have these things. You have rights that are listed in the Bill of Rights, that are listed in the Constitution. Those rights are not to be feared. It is the people who come in and try to tell you that you have rights that are not guaranteed to you and that the government must enforce those rights for you. That is no longer an efficient government, as we've seen. Our government is a representation of nothing but waste, avarice, a blind ambition, greed, perversion. It's disgusting. That is what he's talking about. Not people saying you must defend your rights. Your rights pertained in the Bill of Rights. History will teach us that the former has been much, to reiterate what I just said, except it's coming from him, history will teach us that the former has been found a much more certain road to the introduction of despotism than the latter, and that of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their careers by paying a obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. Obsequious, I don't like that word. Definition: obedience or over-attentiveness to the people, to a group of people. Obedience or over-attentiveness. You have a right to free health care. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I live to serve you. You have a right to... Shut the heck up. Shut your mouth. No, you don't. So he's quite literally saying those people who would do that kind of thing are much more commonly the ones who overthrow a liberty-respecting government and establish a demagogue, and establish themselves as a demagogue, and end as tyrants. They start as this, and they end as tyrants. That is why those of us who are terrified of Obama are terrified of him. He has started as this. And history has shown us that more often than not, these people end as tyrants. Hamilton said it, folks. This isn't my words. These are his words. And I'm giving you the literal aspect of his words. I am reading his words and telling you how they translate to today's language. And what he means literally, because that is how my mind works. That's how upstairs here works. That's why I'm doing it this way. That is why you're hearing his words from my mouth rather than the version of his words out of my mouth. That leads to errors. That leads to misdealings, misguidances, no matter how well intended. That's what happens. That's why you're hearing it from him, and then I put in my 2 cents. So please understand very clearly that that is where we are at. The third part of this, which will be the third letter here. You good? Yeah. Okay, go on. The third letter here. The third part of this letter, rather. Excuse me. Train of thought just got derailed a little bit. Is kind of a wind down, to be honest. He recaps. He reinforces. He restates the importance of things. But there's not necessarily a whole lot new in the rest of this, so we'll finish that up in the next one. This video went a little bit longer. I'm really trying to shorten these down, but this introduction letter is so important for the framework of where we're going. I promise that the videos will get a little bit shorter, but it's just not possible right now. These first 3 videos for letter 1 are of the utmost importance for the framework of where we're going. So that's pretty much where I'm going to call it today. We'll pick up on the paragraph in the course of the preceding observations, so on and so forth. That's where we're going to go with that. Again, thank you guys very much for sticking with me and supporting me through this. It means the world to me. And I hope that we can actually get this out to people and that we can share this so that people can learn something that is sorely, sorely needed in our schools today. But this government will never actually let this be taught in our schools ever again, I don't think. So that's that. Again, the Facebook page, www.facebook.com/CAMVABO, CAMVABO, Conservative American Military Veterans Against Barack Obama. Also, I do have a Twitter account. I don't use it often. I pretty much just use it for news now. But I am SPC Jackalope. That will get you my Twitter, which is mostly a factual representation of what Islam really is in the world when I do post. So that pretty much sums that up, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Saturday, happy weekend, whatever you would like to call it. I'd say go Texans, but yeah, about that. Anyways, y'all have a good one. Be safe this weekend. I might do the third letter tomorrow. That way, just this weekend, we're wrapped up with, or third part of letter 1 this weekend. That way, we're wrapped up with letter 1. And we'll be good to go. All right, y'all be safe. Be smart. Curb stomp a liberal if you need to.